Amen. There's some conventional wisdom among pastors that you don't mess with Christmas. And it's something that even among pastors, even among progressive Protestants, you really, really ought not mess with Christmas. You'll notice that very often the rest of the year, the hymns that we'll sing will never use male gender language or be particularly archaic with the these and thous. And yet the song that we'll sing when I sit down is God, yes, rest ye merry gentlemen. For some reason, we don't mess with Christmas. I have a friend here in the congregation who tells me that every year at this time she pulls out her King James version of the Bible just to be able to read the familiar cadence and rhythm of all of those stories that we heard tonight, the cadence and rhythm of her childhood. I think that even spills over into the fact that at our children's pageant tonight, the baby that stood in for the baby Jesus was the youngest child of the congregation, as is often our tradition, and she did a marvelous job. And I had so many comments from folks about how they loved the fact that Jesus was a little girl. And it strikes me, though, that even in this congregation that carries the torch, waves the banner that girls can do anything boys can do, there are still those comments. I think largely because it's Christmas. I think that tells us something about how conservative we actually are about Christmas. Not necessarily politically or fiscally conservative, but experientially conservative. We want to hear the stories we know. We want to be able to mouth along with the reader. And she wrapped him in swaddling clothes and laid him in a manger because there was no room for them at the inn. And for many of us, it's taken decades to hear the angel sing, peace on earth, goodwill toward all, without stumbling a little bit. We know that's what the text means. But goodwill toward men just seems to have been imprinted in our brains. And so, with that as our lived reality, Christmas is kind of hard to preach. People have great expectations. We've been preparing for months. We need to give the visitors something that's going to sustain them until they come around again. And yet, we're not supposed to do anything different. How in the world can that be? Have any of you seen the movie The Straight Story? It's a 1998 or 99, I'm not sure, movie by David Lynch, Twin Peaks and all of that. The Straight Story is about a fellow named Alvin Straight. He's a farmer from a tiny little town in western Iowa. He's a crotchety old fellow, to be fair, living with his daughter, who's played by Sissy Spacek. And the story starts out with Alvin learning that his estranged brother, his brother that he hasn't talked with, hasn't seen in decades, is dying of cancer. After pondering this for some time, he's convinced that he needs to reconcile with his brother. And since his eyesight has deteriorated to the point that he is no longer able to drive a car, he builds a trailer and hitches it to his 1966 John Deere riding lawnmower and drives it 5 weeks to Mount Zion, Wisconsin, to reconcile with his brother. He drives all that way, does something ridiculous to make amends. His daughter is scared. His friends and townspeople laugh. They think he's lost it. It's dangerous. In one scene, you see his hat blow off as an 18-wheeler drives past him with just 6 inches to spare. And then shortly after that, it's ridiculous. Because in another scene, you see a bicycle race pass him by rather easily. And it's brilliant. Alvin is transformed by his journey. His daughter is transformed by his witness to love and forgiveness. His brother is transformed by the lengths that he will go to in order to be in his life again. You're seeing where this is going, right? I think that this is one of the greatest Christmas stories ever because it gives us just a tiny little glimpse, a tiny, tiny taste of how creatively God came into our lives in that first Christmas. This is a story of a love so powerful, so passionate, so creative, that it would go to ridiculous, never before imagined lengths to be reconciled, to be in relationship. It's a story about being estranged and wanting desperately for that estrangement to not be the last word. It's a story about taking great risks without knowing whether they'll be appreciated or accepted, without knowing whether you'll be safe or if your beloved will break your heart. It's a story of offering your very self, wholly and completely. Because without love, what is there? Am I talking about love? Am I talking about the movie? Or am I talking about Christmas? In Christmas, God comes to earth in human form in order for us to receive the most creative, most complete love that the world has ever known. And then this becomes our project. Every year I watch for a moment when Christmas happens in my life, when I finally get the mood of the season. Sometimes it's as we decorate the church and sing carols one evening. Sometimes it waits until the 4 p.m. children's pageant when one of the angels in the pageant gets a little bossy and tries to get all the other angels to stand in a straight line. Sometimes it's when someone in need drops by the church asking for help, and someone else calls shortly thereafter, offering exactly what's needed. This year, though, instead of watching for Christmas to happen, I am asking you, begging you to join in my bandwagon. Let's all make Christmas happen. Let's join God and Alvin Straight in being creative and active and joyous in our reconciling. Let's be extravagant in the myriad ways that we can bring people back into our lives and offer ourselves, offer our love, our hope, our forgiveness, our peace. Let's go to lengths never before imagined to let people, especially those that we are estranged from, know that they matter and are important and that we love them. Let's mess with Christmas, changing our dominant idea from Christ as gift to Christ as reconciler. I know I'm always told not to mess with Christmas, but I think it's a risk that will be well worth it. Merry Christmas to all, and to all, a good night.